And so identity evolution can happen really gradually and seemingly unconsciously, which is fascinating, right? Because here we talk about like, well, we're human, so we're able to reflect consciously on our personality and consciously on our habits and this and that. But like just being in the right culture of people doing the things that you want to be doing starts to take care of a lot of the aligned action for you. And part of the reason I'm pointing that out is like we're going in, we talked last week about going into the holiday season, right? And it's going to be different this year anyways. Like there's a lot of things that are changing depending on where you are, depending on the numbers. There's a lot of liminal space opening around how you get to construct your holiday season. And by that, I mean, it's like you're out of the program because like the program's not what the program was last year. Right? Culture's not doing the same thing this year as it was doing last year. And some of us may have certain emotional responses to that. But in any case, you can't affect it. Like you really can't affect that. It's bigger than you. So when we're in the liminal space of it, there's really a potential for a reinvention or a new invention of how you want to do this, of what you want to make happen. And that can actually gain traction in future years, which could look a lot more like past years of holidays, because that's the past often does resurface. But you can really use this liminal space, or liminal means beyond the threshold of what? Beyond the threshold of the patterned self, in this case, beyond the threshold of normal. So we're already there. And we're there as a global culture in a very unique way, right? Or just in a unique way. I guess very and unique are redundant. So in a unique way, we're, thanks, Mark. We're beyond a threshold of the pattern of the normal, which means there's space to create. It's the blank canvas. And you get to do that. So I'm going to do this exercise. We just did it in yoga health coaching. So for the yoga health coaches, there's going to be a redundancy. That's like my word of the moment. And I want to focus on body thrive habits. I want to focus on these habits. And I pulled a whole bunch of quotes from Benjamin Hardy's book, Personality Isn't Permanent. And I have mixed feelings about that book. Do you guys want to hear about my mixed feelings? You want to hear my feelings? Well, first, the first part of the book, I'm cracking myself up today. And the first part of the book, he attacks personality tests. And anyone who's done any career development work with me knows I'm a huge fan of personality tests. And I just want to say, like, often writers will choose to rebel against something that, in order to get attention, in order to like gain people's like, oh, this is different. And I believe he did that more as a writing technique than as a personal belief system. I haven't been able to get him back on the podcast to talk about that. He became too popular, which is great. Good for him. I'm psyched for him. He's a great writer. Okay, so that's part of my mixed feeling. The other part of my mixed feeling is that he really is a great writer. Like, and he's becoming a very great thinker. And he's an important person to pay attention to and watch in terms of identity evolution. And what I absolutely adore about Personality Isn't Permanent is he's loosening up something that goes way beyond these personality profile tests, which basically help highlight often how you fascinate or how the world sees you or where you can offer most value by just being your natural self, which those are very, very good things, I believe, to know. And he might disagree with that. What he's done a great job of is helping people realize that they are choosing their current personality, right? And so we all have like aspects of our personality we're like really less proud of, yeah, like, right? And maybe with increasing subtlety, the more evolved we become with increasing subtlety. And then there's the test. And reality comes up with the test of the moment, right? Like, think of any challenging relationship you have. There's some part of your personality that's being tested in a new challenge. Does anything come to mind for anyone when I say that? Yeah, Suzanne saying yeah. right? Like my quick processors are going to nod sooner than the slower processors. There's no true advantage to being a fast processor versus a slow processor. There's just different advantages to both. Okay. So what I'm saying is that like current reality is presenting some sort of relationship challenge, because it will, if we're paying attention. And that the more subtle our awareness is, the more we can see an invitation to evolve some aspect of our personality. And that will require a new behavior. It'll require like a new way of showing up, a new capacity that isn't yet an evolved, like packaged part of our lock, stock, and barrel personality of like how we show up. So, when you leave a situation and you're like, ooh, I think I could have done that better. Or like, I wonder how I might do that better in the future. It might be something along those lines. That's a pause point where you can look back and say, like, was there some past part of my personality that kind of got in the way of that going better? Or of something else happening, some other potential from emerging? And because our habits are not our own, like I really do strongly believe that like it's so much easier, back to Miri's point, if you're with people that have the habits that you want to have, pretty easy. Like all of a sudden you start noticing yourself doing those habits, you start doing those behaviors, you start taking those actions. When you're hanging out with people that have habits that you don't want to have anymore, hard. Like really, really hard to do that. So what we're going to do is first I think I'll read some Ben Hardy quotes from Personality Isn't Permanent just to get us in the mood. How does that sound? You are not a single and narrow type. Type is italicized. You're not a single and narrow type of person. In different situations and around different people, you are different. Your personality is dynamic, flexible, and contextual. Moreover, your personality changes throughout your life, far more than you can presently imagine. All right, this is another one. This is appropriate. People use the past as an excuse to remain stuck in habits and attitudes that keep them from growing. So this is interesting. So now we're taking personality and we're starting to splice it and dice it a little bit. We're saying that there's habits that are part of a personality. There are attitudes that are part of a personality. And there are also emotions that are part of a personality. So here's another that highlights the emotions. Becoming psychologically flexible is key to personal transformation. Not over-attaching to your current identity or perspectives. Becoming insatiably committed to a future purpose and embracing emotions rather than avoiding them is how radical change occurs. So becoming psychologically flexible is key to personal transformation, not over-attaching to your current identity or perspectives, becoming insatiably committed to a future purpose. Future purpose is key. And embracing emotions rather than avoiding them is how radical change occurs. In Living Ayurveda, it's super practical, it's super down to earth, and we want it to make a difference in your life, honestly, the moment you start. Hi, it's Kate Stolman, and I'm going to tell you about how the Living Ayurveda course works and why it works the way it does work. A part of my natural personality is that I'm a futurist. I'm an innovator. I can't help it. It's just the way that my awareness works and has always worked. So I'm always looking at how do we make Ayurveda practical to solve for our biggest problems, at home and nourishing ourselves and getting deep rest and passing on the habits to those who our lives affect. If we understand our habits are truly not our own, we say, hey, whose habits affect me and whose habits am I affecting? And can we align those habits with the kind of radiant longevity that we want to experience, right? Year by year, decade by decade by decade by decade in our road ahead. The other core part of my philosophy is around
collective leadership. And I take those two words very seriously. I see how there's a whole next level of open-minded integration where we look at the questions that you're bringing, the conversations you're wanting to have, and we build that into our leadership model, help lead and guide our community in the direction of addressing the deepest, most potent issues that'll help us get the greatest traction in growth and transformational evolution. So that's a lot of, my philosophy on living our Ayurveda. I look at our planet, I look at the stresses to our ecosystems, the stresses to our human population, our human culture, and that's what we're solving for. So that's how the whole course is geared. I take my community very seriously, become part of my heart, you want to become part of my people, and that's how the course works. I mean, that's why it works too, is it's even though we're all coming in from all over the world, we have an experience of deep connection, deep community, and evolution together. All right, I hope that clarifies some of your questions around the Living Ayurveda course.
All right. Now, are we warmed up enough? Okay, good. Let's go, team. You're going to need a blank piece of paper for this. And this is like my typical identity evolution exercise that we're going to do. And so you may have done part of this before. And what we're going to do is on your piece of paper, and we're going to call this an identity evolution exercise. So I'm sure you've done this before. We're really going to focus between now and the first of the year. And we're going to isolate the past you and the future you. And in my stick figure drawings, I always put a cape on the future you, because this is someone you have not yet become yet. This is like the superhero version of yourself. And I also like the trucker hat. They're very common where I live. All right. We have our own style here in the Rocky Mountains, and we don't need to comment on that. All right. So this is what you want to highlight, because we have a bunch of things to fill in. And one of them is personality. Like, what is the personality of your past self? What are some of the attitudes? What are the emotions of your past self? So take a moment and start to fill in what goes with the past and what goes with the future. We also look to purpose. And you're just writing these in on these lines, right? You're just filling in the blanks. Different words give us different clues. Behaviors, habits. And it doesn't have to necessarily be split into bad, good. It could easily be the past you is good and the future you is just better or more evolved. Or there's certain traits that are needed really for this next phase. So it's not permanent, meaning like what you're choosing in the future yourself, that also is not permanent. It's just really required for the purpose to be fulfilled in the next phase. I'm going to highlight purpose, because purpose is what leads the way. And so when you're considering this next phase between you and the new year, a lot of the question is like, what are you trying to make happen? Like, what's the purpose? What's your larger purpose? We're beyond the threshold of normal. So that means we can create the next normal. And then in regards to the next normal that you're creating, what's the best attitude? Like, what attitude would be a hand up? Like, that would help if I embraced that attitude. What emotions would be really appropriate just to escort that reality into the present? And then breaking down some of the even minute behaviors. Like an example of that is like perhaps smiling more. would be helpful, right? It's such an easy thing of just like, just smile as you're talking, like regardless of what you're saying, just like do it with a smile. Like it's a very minute behavior, but boy, it changes the attitude, it changes the emotion, and it's a direct shift in personality. Because you'll notice that, my mom pointed, or maybe my grandma pointed this out to me when I was young, like how people's faces age. Like what expressions get ingrained into their wrinkle structures of faces. Like that's a very patterned imprint of a personality. It's a patterned imprint of an emotional, of reoccurring emotional patterns. It's an attitude you can see of like, which way do the lines go? So I'm going to read another quote from Personality Isn't Permanent. Purpose trumps personality. Without a deep sense of purpose, your personality will be based on avoiding pain and pursuing pleasure, which is an animalistic and low-level mode of operating. This is the common view and approach to personality for most. However, when you're driven by purpose, you'll be highly flexible and you'll make decisions irrespective of pain and pleasure to create and become what you want. So purpose trumps personality. I like that a lot. I like the way he said that. And part of the reason I like that is anyone who's a card player, boy, I'm really channeling my grandma today, my matriarchal grandma, the one who pointed it out about the wrinkles in the face structure. She's a big card player. So in cards, that's where the term trump comes from. When you trump something, there's something of a hierarchical order, and it has a power. So purpose has a hierarchical, it's on the hierarchical order. So if we were to draw a hierarchy, we would put purpose here at the top. And then purpose can infuse personality. So we can use our personality. And you could say habits would be beneath that. So you want to be purpose directed. The person with the cape is really like shooting the arrow. That's where you have the bow and arrow. I'm going to now mess up my person. How do I draw bow and arrow again? Oh yeah, we put it out front and we pull it back and we shoot the arrow at the target, and the target, that is the purpose. So you got to know what you're aiming for. When you know what you're aiming for, what Ben Hardy's saying there is like, he uses great language. You'll be highly flexible. And this is the tricky part. You'll make decisions irrespective of pain and pleasure. So now you're shaping your personality on purpose. You're saying, well, this is the personality I need to have in order for that to get done. Some of you have probably experienced this in parenting, where you realize like your desire to be nice and kind is really getting in the way of necessary life lessons. Shay's nodding her head vigorously. My guess is Shay's experienced that this week, as have I. And the same thing's true in like puppy training. Like it's the same in a lot of types of relationships, where certain things need to happen that are maybe outside of the personality that you've already developed. It's part of that past. It's part of that past you, right? So there's a personality that's part of the past you. And remember how I said that this could be good. It could be good. It could have been like good enough, but this is clearly better. And again, the whole thing's a moving target, right? Because the now is so fleeting. So there's aspects of our personality, increasingly subtle aspects is what I was pointing to in the beginning, that you'll notice mostly in relationship. So something will be happening and you'll be like, that could have gone different. Or I want to do that better next time. And it'll affect other things. And you'll start to see like, well, if I have this as a dissection plan, now we're in like the biology lab and we're just dissecting our personality, right? And this is our little worksheet for dissecting our personality. And we're saying like, well, what aspect of it that maybe worked good enough in the past what aspect of my personality really showed up in that situation? You know, for me, I'll use an example. I'll throw myself on the altar here. Like the need to influence someone else's behavior, or be seen as because I know a lot and I read a lot and and I've been doing this for a long time. So I do have a lot of wisdom, right? And often I have something useful that I know that I want to share with somebody because I know that they don't know that. And so that's part of I might be like, oh my gosh, this is super useful. But that might not be appropriate in this situation. Like it might be appropriate in some way, in some form, but maybe not in that particular now. Or maybe there's a persistence that I'm trying to drive across this thing that I know that I think would be really helpful to them. And maybe it's in the persistence of that. I'm glad that people are saying that you understand what I'm saying, because this is like subtle, right? This is like kind of a subtle part of a personality. And when you dig deep, it's like, what is it? Is it the need to be the expert? Is it the need to be right? Is it the need to influence someone else's behavior? Is it a lack of just allowing to see where the conversation might go and other ways? And this is where it's like, you might start to notice, you're like, what is better? And you're asking the question. So now you're on the quest. You're on a quest for better. We talked about the quest last week, asking better questions. And then you might just look in this next phase of your life and you're like, what new parts of my personality could I really try out? And maybe there's an aspect in this example, there might be an aspect of just deeper, compassionate listening, and in a subtler level of curiosity of like, what happens to the conversation without my involvement in this case, right? What happens when instead of trying to like lead and direct, I don't lead. And I actually hold a much broader space. So with my awareness, instead of zoning in and pointing forward, I zone out and broaden, right? And if I haven't entrained my personality to do that, that could be pretty subtle. And it doesn't mean that what isn't coming to my awareness to share isn't important. It just means that I know how to play that card, but I'm going to hold it in the deck. And see if I can just build a better hand. Oh my gosh, enough with the card playing analogy, Stillman. All right. So purpose will cause its causation. So this is at the level of causation. And if you're dedicated enough to purpose, what will happen is, and this is what Ben Hardy's saying, he says, when you're driven by purpose, you'll be highly flexible and you'll make decisions irrespective of pain and pleasure. Now, I think this guy started studying yoga at some point, although I have no evidence on that. He's Mormon. It's in the Yoga Sutras, it comes up in the kleshas as raga dvesha, right? So raga is the desire to experience more pleasure. Dvesha is the desire to experience less pain. So aversion to pain, preference towards pleasure, raga dvesha. And these are stains, these are kleshas. These are ways that the pattern self gets in the way of the potential. It's textbook for at least a few thousand years. Before that, you can see it in stories everywhere. You can see it in all the archetypal, archaic stories from any religion or culture. Okay, so humans have known that for a really long time. So you're saying that your purpose for this next phase of your life, of like how you're doing now, we're just saying now to New Year's, like how you're doing that, what your highest purpose is in this next short phase, that's what you're going to wire your habits, your behaviors, your emotions, your attitudes, and your personality for. So if I continue with my little example here, for me to be able to not fall into the pattern, we'll say, of somewhat of like know-it-all influencer, whatever that is, that I'm going to have to be aware enough to catch myself, because the personality seems permanent. The groove seems deep. That's the samskara in yoga. So in order to do that, like, which of the habits is going to be most necessary? And I can tell you right off the bat, if I'm not well rested, forget about it. There's no way. If I'm not well rested, there's no way I'll be able to overcome a subtle personality pattern. So like early to bed must happen. The other thing that probably must happen is sitting in silence. I'll probably need to be able to do that quietly by myself before I can do it around like a dinner table, or before I can do that with other people over a live Zoom call, etc.